My name is Kelly Wallace, and I'm the California Subject Specialist in the History Department at the Los Angeles Public Library. Welcome to the second episode of LA Untangled, a conversation series that we hold with people who engage with Los Angeles history in interesting and unique ways. Today's guest is Victoria Bernal. She is a chronicler, public historian, researcher, writer, and good friend of the library. Victoria founded the Twitter project LA History in 2009. She has written articles about Los Angeles history for KCET, California Historical Society, Curved LA, LAist, and KCRW. These are just some of the many projects she has going that involve LA history. As you can see, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's welcome Victoria. Thank you for being here. Hello.
Hi, Kelly.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I want to get started with, I guess, where it all started, your family. You're a native Angelino, and your family has over 130 years of history here in Los Angeles. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your family?
Happy to. The first ancestor who came to California, I recently found out, arrived in 1846. He was a Mormon gold seeker. And while his wife and adult children did the Mormon trek and the wagon train across the country, he was on a ship called the SS Brooklyn that arrived in San Francisco in 1846. And he then makes his way to Sutter's Fort, Sutter's Mill, and he's in a book about Mormon gold seekers. I mean, he's there when they find gold, but he's not a part of the main story. And he ultimately, decides, the whole point was for the Mormons to collect the gold and bring it back to their new place in Salt Lake City. And on his way on a wagon train in 1848, he dies of mysterious circumstances. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing someone took his gold. We don't really know. But the first ancestor to settle in Southern California was in the 1880s. It's my great-great-grandmother's brother. We're not exactly sure when he arrives, but he shows up on a church list in Santa Ana in 1888. And I think it explains why my family is, there's a family plot in the Santa Ana Public Cemetery, mm-hmm. Which, my great-grandparents, great-great-grandmother's there. And then my great-great-grandmother arrives not too long after, late 1800s, and she settles, she arrives as an elderly woman. She settles in Compton near the beet fields. And then her son, my great-grandfather, arrives a little bit after that, early 1900s, and they settle in the Florence neighborhood. He liked to say that he was the first butter salesman of Southern California. I think it was before Google, because a quick Google search will show that's not the case. Oh. Not that anyone's competing for the title of first butter salesman, but
so many people's family histories are, I'm not quite sure, so it's okay.
So I'll settle with early butter salesman, but it's why up until my mom died, we were always buying Challenge butter. But they had an office here in Los Angeles, and I think there's a building built in the 1920s in the Arts District that still stands. That was the Challenge butter, and we have a lot of Challenge butter stuff in our archive. And then on my dad's side, my dad's father was born in Mexico, and they arrived in Los Angeles probably early 1920s. And we have this amazing typed list of all of my grandfather's siblings, the name, the date, the streets they were born at, what time they were born at, and it's all in Spanish. And so it's, my grandfather's born in Mazatlan, there's one more child, and then the next child is born in Los Angeles on 17th Street. But they were moving a lot, so that's not all the children were born on 17th Street.
Right, but that's amazing that they documented that. So
yes, I mean it's a very frail document now, but I'm just so grateful because if I ever go to Mazatlan, I could find the street that my grandfather was born on.
It's amazing. Your mother, I know, had a love of history, but it seems like it goes back even more. You were saying your grandmother also was very...
Yeah, I think my grandmother had the spirit of an archivist or the spirit of a historian, even though she was a stay-at-home mom. Also, she went to UCLA when it was still called the UC Southern Branch, when it was at on Vermont. We have a yearbook that, she bought a yearbook. But she, again, they were very modest, so she kept having to stop and start college so that she could work, raise money, save money, go to school. And at some point she gets sent to a bunch of Presbyterian women in Los Angeles, raise money to send her to a Presbyterian college in Kansas, where she ultimately meets my grandfather, and she leaves Los Angeles to get, raise her family in the Midwest. So my mother was not born in Los Angeles. She was born in the Midwest. But because my grandmother was so committed to her siblings, my mom was, first time she came to Los Angeles, she was 2, has memories of Union Station when it was brand new. Her sister, who has lived in Minneapolis her whole life, the baby book says her first park, like the baby book, what was the baby's first park? And I was just looking at it recently, last couple years, and it said Griffith Park. And I was like, how does this woman in Minneapolis, her first park is Griffith Park? That's because they were so coming to Los Angeles.
Too much snow to go to the park anyway.
But my grandmother, I think her leaving Los Angeles made her much more aware of what it meant to be from Los Angeles. And I know that because I myself have lived, I didn't really have a sense of being an Angelino until I lived in Washington, D.C. for several years, in which there was, when I was there, it was my first time experiencing people who didn't love Los Angeles. And they had such a horrible stereotypes of it. And that's when I really kind of came to the defense, started building this defense of Los Angeles in my own mind. And I think the same was happening for my grandmother. I mean, it's, I have this, we'll talk about it later, but, I tweet about this day in LA history, and I've developed this calendar, and I found this 1960 page that my grandmother typed in the 1960s. It's called, she writes, History of Los Angeles County, Chronological List. And she has all these dates in Los Angeles history. 1875, January 17th, first train reached Anaheim. May 20th, 1875, serious incendiary fires in Los Angeles. May 27th, Confidence Engine Company No. 2 organized. And then I think my favorite, in 1875, the broom factory was established.
That's amazing that she was keeping track of important events.
It was. I haven't fact-checked it. I mean, I think she, because in here she does like a summary of Los Angeles history from Dr. J. Whitney's historical sketch, but it's just amazing that she just, she was so passionate about this.
Yeah, I love it. Because that's why I always say I'm a fierce defender of LA. So let's jump ahead a little bit, because I want to talk about your Twitter project, which is LA History, at LA History. You should follow her. But you started that with your mother, right?
Yes.
I was going to say jump ahead, but let's go. How did your mother end up back in Los Angeles? And let's talk a little bit about her career, writing for Sunset and working at the Huntington, and then starting your Twitter account.
Sure. She, after she graduated high school, she came to Los Angeles for college. So she came to Occidental. And in her words, if she were here, she'd say, "I never look back." And it's funny because, at that time in the 60s, women were going to college for their MRS.
Yes.
But she, in her own words, would say that she was not particularly attractive, so there was no offers. And it's funny because she saved all the wedding invitations of her friends, and there's probably like 20 invitations in the course of a summer.
Oh my goodness.
Of, high school and college friends being married after they graduated, and she didn't have that. So she didn't want to be a teacher, and she somehow fell into this job. Sunset Magazine was looking for an office assistant in their LA office in the editorial department. And at this point, Sunset Magazine was headquartered at Menlo Park. Mm-hmm. And there was an LA office where it was mostly admin, but they were building out their editorial department. So there was the editor, and then there was her. And within 3 months of being hired, the editor quit. Mm-hmm. So now my mom is the only one in the LA office writing, given this responsibility to find stories. And again, she was a new college graduate, so she wasn't given a ton of responsibility, but she was basically given the assignment, go find stories about Los Angeles. And she tells this funny story because in the LA office, they had like a library of resources for the writers. And there was a WPA guide from the 1940s that was up there. 1940s?
Yeah.
and we still have it. And she, she's like, okay, well, now I've got to write stories. Okay, let me look. Busch Gardens. I'm going to write about Busch Gardens. Well, by the 60s, Busch Gardens in Pasadena was gone.
Yes.
And she talks about trying to find Busch Gardens because she didn't realize that wasn't. But what started off as her being an office assistant grew into this 20-year career where she's writing about not just Los Angeles, but Southern California and kind of Riverside, Central California. She's gone down to Mexico. It's just amazing. She was really, I'm so envious of her having this job. Within months, weeks of getting this job, the first big assignment is to go with the team that is doing the cover story about Palm Springs. And, I come from, she saw that her mother saved everything, so my mother saved everything. So I have letters that she wrote to her mom and dad, she stayed at the Ocotillo Lodge, which is a mid-century, it's still there.
I was going to say, was she impressed with the mid-century modern?
She writes the letter on the Ocotillo Lodge letterhead that we have, and she's like, there's even a phone in the bathroom. And because she was the only woman, she had her own room. And basically, she was brought along because most of the writers came down from Menlo Park, but if there was any additional information needed, she would be the one charged with going back to Palm Springs. But she ends up on the cover of the January 1962 Sunset magazine. Never golfed in her life. Still, I don't think ever really golfed. But it was just, she kind of, it was just this amazing career, which I think in her mind, she wasn't sure she wasn't super confident in it. And so she did that for 20 years in the LA office. A lot of people don't know that Sunset had a robust LA office. And when she left Sunset, she then got a job at the Huntington Library, which she then...
Another august institution.
Yes. And stayed there for the next 25 years. She started in the development office. But by the time she retired, she was publishing books. She was the head of the Huntington Library Press, publishing books about, some of it was Los Angeles, but it was also about gardens, about art, a lot of what the scholars were, based on what's in the Huntington Archive.
Right.
And so when she retired, and in 2009, I just got, I had the techie background, and I was doing my own LA history projects, and I basically just got tired of waiting for the Twitter feed I wanted to see, and I was like, I think between the two of us, we could create this Twitter feed about LA history that just tweets history all the time.
Well, yeah, and this was in 2009, which, there really wasn't any other Twitter feed that was solely devoted to Los Angeles history.
Correct.
And certainly not in the public historian sort of vein. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. At the time, there wasn't one Twitter feed devoted to history because people were, there were a lot of people who were tweeting about history, but not consistently history all the time. And there was there's always news about LA history that I wanted to promote. And I just wanted to focus, it's not just helping to amplify the current stories that are being written about LA history, but the amazing archives that existed. And because I had a techie background, I wanted to, people were just, at that point, people were dismissing, social media.
Yeah, because Twitter was only several years old at that time, and so the sort of serious historians weren't dismissive or not involved yet in the platform.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to show that you could create meaningful content related to history on Twitter. It is limiting. And so, certainly, it can begin the conversation. It can direct people to where there is a lot more in-depth conversation. And so we started it in 2009, and I chose this format about this day in LA history mostly to create, because, in the absence of current articles being written about history, you could always talk about, on this day in LA history, and then what drives the story is what's available in local archives.
Yeah, because that's what makes it interesting. You always link to something, an image or a video or an article or an archive.
And I feel strongly about that. Even if I already, even if I don't need to cite the source, like I know this piece of history, like that's not the point of the Twitter feed. The Twitter feed is to always bring, people back to the original source or a like-minded source, or that's why there's no website, because especially when I started in the beginning, people would say, why isn't there a website about what you do? And I was like, because that's not the point. The point is to direct people to all this amazing work that's happening across the city, across the county, across Southern California. And even nationwide. I mean, there's a lot of history in national archives, not just national, but in other states, because people save their postcards coming into Los Angeles or their menus. And so and there's the LA Public Library has an amazing archive. And I mean, I know we're going to talk about that later, but, there's also all these smaller archives that have made stuff available. And it's about trying to remind people that this exists for your own, if you want to research that. And also, dead authors. I mean, I hate to be so blunt, but there's a lot of. I'm so glad that there are so many young people who are wanting to write about LA history, but there are a lot of people who did this for their whole career and trying to kind of talk about those authors, bring up those authors, along with academics who are not on social media at all. Right. Historians who've been researching a certain subject for 20 or 30 years. The goal is to kind of bring them in. I mean, this is all. In my ideal world, because in the present day, there's so much, I'm not always able to get to everything. I'm constantly disappointed that I missed this topic or this event, but ideally, those are kind of the how I envisioned LA History Twitter feed.
Well, that was fantastic. I was going to ask you what your aims were, but you've covered that very well. But I also want to. What's your tagline? What people don't?
I don't always go back to my job. Jogging the collective memory of Los Angeles. People think LA has no history. They just don't know where to look.
Yes, exactly. They just don't know where to look, and you're taking care of that with
I feel strongly about the first part of that, is jogging the collective memory of LA, because I think that first phrase assumes, whether I'm correct or not, I assume that the people who follow me know their LA history. And my job, what I do with the Twitter feed, is just to remind something that they already know, because we're busy with life and of course, this is a crazy news cycle, so it's assuming that, one, the audience already knows. But for those who don't think LA doesn't have history, I want to show that there's so many other places to look besides museums, besides institutions.
Right.
There's so many community expressions of history.
Right. That's one of my things, is history's all around you.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that in the 4 walks, too. But anyway. Okay, so now I want to go back a little bit to your mother and writing for, because Sunset Magazine is such a tremendous resource. And you had kind of a front row seat.
I did.
A lot of, but I want to kind of highlight that here at the library we have an amazing collection of periodicals. That's library lingo for magazines. And Sunset Magazine really started in 1898.
Yes.
By the Southern Pacific Railroad. But following it through, you really can trace the history of California, the West, but California, Los Angeles. I mean, architecture and lifestyles and travel, and I mean, it's just an amazing resource. And the archives now are at Stanford University and available for you. So let's just want to highlight that what people can find if they come in. And there you are. Your father's holding you up, and you're looking at the Wells Fargo wagon. Is that the Wells Fargo?
Yeah, I think we're in San Presidio Park in San Diego.
And so cute.
So my dad is holding me up into the Wells Fargo Museum. My mom liked to say, we were very much a Sunset Magazine family. And, in those days, Sunset didn't hire models. So if you were a writer, you brought your family, you brought friends, and they were in the magazine. I'm still good friends with the former food editor, Jerry DeVecchio, and I was up there 2019 because she's up in San Francisco, and we were looking through some magazine at Sunset in the 1980s, and literally, as she's turning a page, she's like, "Oh yes, that's so and so's son. Oh yeah, there's so and so. That was the food editor. That was the photographer.
Funny.
That was," and it's very much family. Which one is that?
This one is the Bradbury Building.
Oh,
there
yes.
you are.
This is
classic LA landmark.
This is my mom's story, downtown Los Angeles for children. This is probably, my mom did a story, kind of what, this is the 80s, so there wasn't as much there as there is now.
All right, the Triforium.
Yes, yeah. And when the Triforium had pools, there were pools of water. And so me and
the music wasn't working then either.
And so there's a picture of me and my mom and a childhood friend at the Bradbury Building, which it's funny because this Bradbury Building picture, often what would happen, even the photographers, took probably about 200 to 300 photos per session. And, for some key ones, they would give my mom 8.5 by 11s of just so she could have of me and her. And all the ones where I'm front facing, I have the weirdest look on my face, like I'm really bored. because it's like, oh, we're looking at a building. Like, it's not that. And so it's funny to me that the picture they used is behind.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they could get a good one.
They were like, yeah,
that's your best side. Even as I read it, I'm like, it's a little bit of a stretch, Mom. I mean, there was a children's museum. There's photos of the children's theater here at the public library.
There's the library.
And that's me on the balcony of the Bonaventure.
And
I always
get lost
me running under that's me coming through FAO Schwartz. And
oh my gosh, you're in all these pictures.
And it's funny because my mom was actually interviewed on the radio about this story, and it was all going pretty smoothly. And then the broadcaster asked, like, so what is the Triforium? And you could hear my mom pause as she struggles to explain.
There's no explanation for the Triforium.
She's like, she does have an explanation, but you could hear her kind of stammering for it.
There really isn't. But just even this article, you can see because the development, because downtown, used to not have nearly.
And we were living in Echo Park, so this was very easy for us to. That's why I was born in Echo Park, and so that's what downtown was kind of like a play, backyard for us.
Oh, this was interesting because your mother wrote a story on puppets in Los Angeles.
Yes, she did.
And then the Turnabout Theater, you said that it sparked your love of because we have we have the Turnabout Theater collection here at the library, and there's a display up in the Getty Gallery right now in Turnabout Theater.
Well, and it's funny because she saved so much of her Sunset archive, so including editorial. There was a memo that was sent to all the admin talking about kind of, okay, this is what's in this month's Sunset, this is how you can sell it. And in it, there's a paragraph about how my mom is now the puppet expert in the office.
I know.
And she was very proud, and she would say, even in the 80s, 90s, she's like, I'm the puppet expert. I'm like, Mom, that was the 70s. Like, stuff has changed. But I will say it was this article where she really developed a love of the Turnabout Theater. She never went personally, but she had read about it. And she, and I remember her telling me about it, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But then, she got me really into it, and I know she would have loved the exhibit downstairs because it's amazing, and the Turnabout Theater has so many different angles for LA history. But yeah, and then also, this picture, it's by Jerry Frederick, and he was going to throw away all his negatives, so he gave them to us. Like I have. In my house, I have all his negatives that he took for Sunset Magazine in the 70s and 80s, and it's amazing. I just posted one of my mom with Bob Baker. It was for this article, and so it's Bob Baker in the 70s. He's got this big love belt buckle on it. But yeah, she just really, she really loved. And I grew up going to Bob Baker Marinettes because I lived in Echo Park. So
yeah, I have memories of that as a child also.
This is really funny.
Anyway, we have Mario. Now I want to talk about another one of your many interesting endeavors, and this is the project that you did with LA Walks, Los Angeles Walks, where you organized a series of walks that walked the original borders of Los Angeles when it was the Pueblo.
Yes.
And I just think this is like an amazing project. Did you have like 50 people join?
Well, yeah, it was amazing. It started off as a personal project with some LA history friends. It was 4 of us. It was David Kapoor, Leela Higgins, Nathan Masters, and it kind of was born out of actually an LA history happy hour where I was like, I've always wanted to walk to the original 4 corners. It was mapped out by Henry Hancock in 1858. And in the late 70s, early 80s, the LA City Historical Society put plaques at each of the 4 corners. It was built. It was all part of the buildup, for LA's bicentennial in 1981, and then the LA Olympics in 1984. So everybody was kind of trying to put a shine on either history or current. And so I've always wanted to walk all 4. And so I brought this up at LA History Happy Hour, and people at the table were excited. And then, ultimately I think it was the 4 of us where we just started to plot it out. And I would say in the beginning, I think Nathan and David did, at some point they did their own walk along the South, and then all 4 of us tried to do all 4, which you can't do in a day. It's about 26 miles. Unless you're a very robust walker, then you probably can. But we kind of broke it up, and then I was doing some work with LA Walks, and David Kapoor was on the board of LA Walks, and so they expressed interest about turning this into a public project, which I will be honest, I thought I didn't really think anybody else was going to want to do it except some really hardcore walkers. But I remember showing up for that first day in 2019 when we were going to walk the West Border, and we had 20 to 30 people. And, and we spread the walk out over several months because, again, you can't relax and do it all in a day. And it just kept growing. I think at the height of one of the walks, we had 50 people. And there was always such the sense of pride when you reached the plaque. And people were so stunned to see, I think the plaque at the southeast corner is at the corner of Olympic and Indiana, and that plaque is inside a smoke shop. Well taken care of, but it's behind a fence, and you would never notice unless you just happen to be standing. And there's actually a time capsule underneath it. At least that's what the LA City Historical newsletter said when they had a big to-do, because with every plaque there was a big to-do, it was a big celebration.
Because I used to hike at Debs Park.
Oh, yeah.
Like every Sunday.
Yes.
I had no idea there was a plaque there. So that's why I was like, who knew about these plaques?
Well, and it was just really interesting. I mean, I think I'm somebody that, I love reading about history and I can kind of get, conceptualize it. But for me to actually really understand it deeply, I need to be in that space. And so and walking and getting a sense of how the length of it in my body in that walk. I mean, I was always the slowest walker of all of them. But it was interesting to kind of see, especially along Hoover on the west and Indiana on the east, how the streets really do come at an angle, and you can actually see the law of Indies in place on the street. And we actually, I recorded a lot of audio from this, and that's what people were saying, and it was really inspiring because.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love. We'll just talk briefly about the law of the Indies, how it was set up, but it's that they were. Set the streets
they kind of
at
popped the
a
streets.
45-degree angle, but in LA they didn't quite make it to 45 degrees.
Right, I think
correct?
it's 36 degrees, according to DJ Waldy.
Within the original square.
Yeah.
What is it, 4 leagues, or what do they call it? But
I think it's two Spanish leagues square.
But then when the city expanded beyond that, they went to the
Jeffersonian grid.
Yeah. And so at Hoover, and you could see it right over there, like the streets are like this, and then they come in like this.
And that's why you have you have blocks, that are kind of at a 45-degree angle and then a 135-degree angle. And now, what you just kind of like, oh, that's weird, but now you know why.
Right. Well, now it's not related to this, but there'll be occasionally a street that goes outside of that goes along like that. Oh, it's because it's following an old rail line or whatever. Yes. So that's when you're boots on the ground, you find out so much more than I think driving by, whizzing by, cursing at the other traffic.
Well, exactly, and especially on the South Line, there is no easy way to walk it because of development. It's this, you have to kind of do a zigzag.
Right.
But if you look at Google Maps, you can see the old right-of-way, and there's like this perfect line. And even when you're actually there, you can see the old train tracks coming out through the asphalt in some spaces. Mm-hmm. And if you kind of stand there and look down, and you could just, there's no road, but you could just see because the buildings were built around that train line. Yeah. So you can see that original southern border. And again, you wouldn't see that if you were just driving by.
Right.
And it was just a fascinating way to engage with the history and know it a lot better.
I just think it's fantastic. You can read more about the walks on the Los Angeles Walks website. And they've also, because of the pandemic, to encourage walking, because that's all anybody could do, they put together these turn lists.
Yeah.
So you can do, for each border, there's a turn list, and it'll tell you northeast corner plaque at Debs Park entrance, up Debs Park Road, right turn at parking lot, turn left at top of the hill, walk around the pond. I mean, it gives you step-by-step directions, so someone can do this on their own or with a group.
Well, and hopefully people do, and also do very respectfully, because, a lot of these are going through neighborhoods that, we have to be very mindful. They're fighting gentrification, and, it's super important to kind of be mindful that, if you're an outsider in that community, to be super respectful and not, this is not some tourist thing, but we have it there for people who want to know the city in a deeper way.
Thanks for bringing that up. And now, are you going to have another incarnation of this?
We are. We're actually in the stages of planning our next, apparently they were so popular. But this time we're not going to walk, we're not going to trace the square.
Popular demand.
We're going to start in the center at El Pueblo and then go out into the different corners. So that way people who've done the walk before, it'll be a different walk.
Right.
And it's actually how, when Henry Hancock did the survey, he started at the center and then moved out. So that's kind of why we're going to, go in that direction. And so that'll be in 2022.
Okay, I look forward to that.
And we're busy planning it.
Okay, you lifelong library lover.
Yes.
But I want to mention that you play the Sixth City librarian, Tessa Kelso, on the Central Library video wall.
Yes.
And so anytime somebody comes down to Central Library, they should check out the video wall. Tessa Kelso was kind of a kick-ass librarian.
She was. I was, and it's funny, one of the first articles my mom and I wrote for KCT was 12 librarians who helped save LA history, and she was one of them. I mean, we've been a Tessa fan for a long time, because she, was, I think even, I'm going to say before Charles Lummis was trying to help preserve the California missions, and then she joins his efforts after she already kind of started some efforts. But then she did amazing stuff within the library.
Yes.
And it was an honor. I think I was approached to do it, and I don't think I look anything like her, except, but it was just funny. And it was amazing that day because, the costume people really, I was wearing an authentic 1860 outfit, and it was in the middle of August, and it was these long sleeves, and, and I looked at the mirror. I mean, it wasn't the most flattering. I looked in the mirror, I was like, oh my God, I look like Mrs. Olsen on Little House on the Prairie. But it was fun, to kind of play Tessa, and I was honored because she's just this. But I do love the library and history of Los Angeles. I mean, Mary Foy was one of my favorite LA people because she was only the city librarian not for very long and became a teacher, but she was so passionate about the city's history, the way someone is when you're born here. And probably mid-century, she's at every kind of groundbreaking, and I worked, for 10 years, I worked at 8th and Figueroa, which is not very close to 7th and Figueroa. So whenever I always think about the Foy House on 7th and Figueroa.
Right.
And then, Miriam Matthews is another one of my favorite librarians.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I wish somebody would write a book about Miriam Matthews because she's so amazing and did so many things beyond. I mean, this is what's amazing about librarians. I mean, they're just so active in different ways and passionate about sharing that information. So yes.
Yeah. And maybe the last thing you can share with us was maybe your library card that you brought with us from when you were.
And my mom even saved my temporary library card, which has my very bad signature when I was 4. But this is my original library card.
Chicken scratch.
I guess I don't live at that address anymore in Echo Park.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
It's not as
it's not
visually the way they are today. Which every time you guys do a new library card, I think I get the new one.
I know. Then I'm like, oh, but I like the old one too.
But my mom, she always consulted Tom Owens here of the LA Public Library when she was writing about Sunset. When we did the LA Four, and I want to say this about the LA Four Corners, I consulted with Glenn Creason. Me and David Kapoor came, and he helped us with the Sanborn map so that we could kind of see where we were walking. I'm a huge fan of the library and all the resources that you guys make available. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Just a couple. I always like to end with just a couple of fun, random questions. So, what is your favorite place to take someone from out of town?
Is it going to be too cheesy to say the library?
No.
It's the library, and I'm not exaggerating. Like I said, I've lived in DC and I did graduate school in London, so I do have friends who come from all over, and I do take them to the library. I mean, I love the way I say it is it's a monument to the written word. I show them the outdoor steps and how it's kind of the evolution of language and the outdoor steps. I take them in the elevator where there's the card catalog, and that the card catalogs are, depending on what floor you stop on, that card catalog is specific to that floor. I probably show them the rotunda. I show them, when I got this library card, my mom, because, my mom and I were here a lot as we were working on the LA History Project, and she would always point to that. It's not I don't even know, it's not a desk now, but it's kind of this wooden desk-like thing outside of Teenscape, and she's like, that's where I lifted you up so you could write your signature on getting your library card. And so this is what I show them when we're going through the library, because it's a beautiful space that mixes history. When it opened, we're looking out at I'm looking out at the painted ceilings. It's just,
it is.
It is beautiful. And Alvera Street, I think Alvera Street's also one of the other places I take people.
can get taquitos. What is your favorite book about LA? Nonfiction or fiction?
Well, it's tricky because, when you're deep in it, it's, I don't really have favorites, but I do.
I know, I can't even pick favorite ice cream, so I understand.
But I will say one well-worn book that I have is Eric Avila's Folklore of the Freeway. I find myself coming back to it for different things. I have all kinds of Post-it notes on it. It's kind of worn at the edges. I've outlined it. It's it's not just looking at the ways that freeways tore apart communities of color across the nation, but with also looking at Los Angeles. But it's how communities responded to that. It's looking at so the freeways did cut through East LA Boyle Heights, but now look at all this art that's happened. Not necessarily approving it, but just saying how communities responded to how communities often used art to mitigate some of the ways that their communities were torn apart. I mean, he talks about San Diego, in which there's Chicano Park, which is all these amazing murals under the freeway underpass, and it's also a look about various fights of the freeways and who won and who lost and what resources did they have at their disposal. That I'm referring to a lot. Again, like I said, I don't have favorites because there's just too many that I find amazing. But
well, again, I grew up in South Pasadena, which fought the 710 freeway for decades, and I know, of course, people think, talk about the South Pasadena as a community that had money as opposed to some of the other communities that had less resources. But.
Well, and I have a friend whose family is, I think, either 3 or 4 generations from Pomona, Claremont, and her older brother is still mad about the 10 freeway coming through Pomona, and it's just you have all these stories about how it was like. I was born in Echo Park, and I have trouble trying to envision what the original Echo Park playground looked like, because when you read historical accounts of it, it was just this huge thing, and now you've got the 101 freeway dividing it, in which the tennis courts are on one side, and the rest, it's such a shadow of its former self.
Yeah. What's your favorite LA meal?
Well, I'm going to talk about a meal I had with the Homestead Museum. I did this project, I was working with the Autry last year, 2020, and we partnered with a couple women at the Homestead Museum because, everyone's on lockdown, and we were doing a lot of cooking from the archives, and we partnered for National Cooking Day to cook from each other's archives historical recipes, and it was amazing. And so in 2021, because I live close to the Homestead Museum, they invited me to taste test a series. They were doing, I think it might have been one of their last ones. They cooked from the 1905 LA Times cookbook for a jolly picnic for Labor Day. And so they invited me to taste test. I mean, I think I brought something, but it wasn't, they are serious cooks who understand the science about when you're trying to convert old recipes into the present day standards. And, I think we had, what do we have? We had a sardine salad, which was really good. It was in stuffed tomatoes. We had strawberry rolls, I think cucumber pickles, I think that's the word, and then tamale croquettes that included oysters in it, which actually was really good.
Oh, it sounds good.
And it was fun because I love this, again, it kind of goes back to when you're walking the LA Four Corners. I like doing, I like kind of feeling, when you're cooking old recipes, you're kind of going through the same motions that they did 100 years ago, and you feel this kind of connection, sometimes having a conversation like, is this really the way the sauce is supposed to gel, or what am I missing, or and so it was definitely one of my favorite meals of 2021.
Why am I not surprised that your favorite meal is a historical meal? Well, thank you, Victoria, so much for joining me today. It's been so much fun, and I think your passion for Los Angeles history really comes through.
Thank you.
And I know you've got lots of other fun endeavors that we could talk about. Maybe we'll have a part 2 sometime. Anyway, so thank you for coming, and be sure to follow Victoria on Twitter @LA History. And until next time.
Thank you.